There is a particular kind of heartbreak that comes with discovering that a writer whose work has shaped your reading life has been implicated in serious allegations. Alice Munro's stories have spoken to generations of readers, especially those drawn to the interior lives of women navigating power, repression, and survival. And yet that Munro remained loyal to her husband, Gerald Fremlin, despite her daughter, Andrea Skinner's allegations that he had sexually abused her, forces a painful reckoning. Skinner has asked, rightfully, for this truth to be part of her mother's story. And so now we have to sit with it. I'm Nick, and this is Dr. Cranky Pants Reads. The question I'm pondering is, what do I, or we as readers, do with Alice Munro now? This conversation has been at the forefront of my mind since The New Yorker published a really powerful piece on December 23rd about Alice Munro and her role in the ongoing allegations raised by her daughter, Andrea Skinner. Link in the video description if you want to read. It is a deeply compelling article that forces us to confront the complexity of reckoning with an author's legacy. Munro is an author I've enjoyed in the past, and this revelation brought about a cacophony of questions, which I'm going to work through here. This is going to be more me thinking out loud than anything else, with very few answers. Munro's fiction has long been celebrated for its nuanced portrayal of women struggling against oppressive social structures and controlling men. Knowing what we do now, those same stories take on a darker, more unsettling shade. How do we read Munro's work in light of these allegations? For many of us, this isn't the first time we've had to confront this question. In recent years, a number of literary figures have gone from beloved to OMG, WTF. Neil Gaiman, Junot Díaz, Sherman Alexie, Blake Bailey, Marion Zimmer Bradley, K Rowling, Jay Asher, Matt De La Pena, and James Dashner. Just a smattering. Each of them now attached to allegations, statements, or actions that have permanently altered how we see them. What does it mean when we keep arriving at this point over and over again? The debate over whether we can separate art from artist isn't new, but it feels different when an author's moral failure contradicts the very themes that made their work resonate. Munro's stories explored the subtle and overt ways that women are controlled. Yet according to Skinner's account in The New Yorker, Munro ignored her daughter's suffering to protect a man she loved. Blake Bailey, meanwhile, was a literary biographer who wrote about Philip Roth, himself known for misogynistic themes, while facing multiple allegations of sexual misconduct, including inappropriate interactions with young students. These allegations led his publisher, W. Norton, to halt shipments of his Roth biography. Junot Díaz presents yet another complication. His fiction often explores machismo, oppression, and cycles of trauma, yet he has faced allegations of verbal abuse and sexual misconduct. His case is even more complex given that he himself has spoken publicly about being a survivor of childhood sexual assault. How do we reconcile the harm he has done with the harm that was done to him? Is reconciliation possible? This raises a difficult question. If literature can expose structural harms, does it absolve the author from replicating those harms in their own life? And if an author acknowledges that it wrongs and seeks accountability, should that affect how we engage with their work? Then there's the case of Marion Zimmer Bradley, which mirrors that of Munro. Her novels, particularly The Mists of Avalon, have shaped generations of fantasy readers, offering feminist retellings of myth and legend. Yet, according to her daughter, Moira Grayland, Bradley allegedly abused her as a child and shielded her husband, Walter Breen, from consequences despite knowing of his inappropriate relationships with minors. Bradley's case exemplifies one of the most difficult reckonings in literary history. How do we engage with a book that was designed to empower women when it's alleged its author was actively harming the very people their work claimed to represent? And then we have K Rowling. While she has not been accused of criminal actions like others on this list, her statements about transgender people have sparked a backlash, particularly from the LGBTQ+ community and many who once found belonging in the Harry Potter series. Her anti-trans rhetoric, framed as a defense of women's rights, has caused fans, actors from the film adaptations, and even longtime collaborators to distance themselves from her. Rowling's case forces us to ask if an author's words contribute to real-world harm against marginalized groups. How should that affect how we engage with their work? Roald Dahl adds yet one more layer to this discussion. His books remain beloved by generations of readers, but his anti-Semitic statements, racist caricatures, and misogynistic tropes have long been a stain on his legacy. Unlike Rowling, whose harm is unfolding in real time, Dahl's work has actively been rewritten by publishers, particularly after Netflix acquired the rights to his catalog, to remove offensive language, sparking debate over whether posthumous revisions amount to responsible updating or censorship. Following public backlash, Dahl's books were republished with their original language alongside revised editions, allowing readers to choose. This raises the question, was Netflix attempting to make Dahl more palatable for modern audiences? And at what cost? By editing his works to align with modern sensibilities, they fundamentally reshaped how new readers experience Dahl, no longer encountering his stories as he originally wrote them, but rather as versions that have been carefully curated to remove problematic elements. And while Dahl himself made some revisions during his lifetime, including the famous Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, there are still elements within his books that require discussion between the books, young readers, and the adults in their lives. The Netflix era alterations, then, represent a shift away from engaging with Dahl as he was, and toward a version of Dahl that is more sanitized for contemporary audiences. With the rise of social media, it seems like we are always expected to take a stand. Is removing a book from my personal bookshelf different from making a public declaration on Blue Sky, advocating for the cancellation of an author? If we quietly distance ourselves from an author's work without announcing it, does that carry less moral weight? Does our canceling need to be public in order to matter? And at what point does canceling start to resemble censorship? According to the American Library Association, there is a crucial distinction between banning books and individual decisions about whether to engage with an author's work. Libraries have a responsibility to provide access to materials regardless of an author's personal failings, because limiting access based on moral judgments can set a dangerous precedent. The ALA's Library Bill of Rights explicitly states that material should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. At the same time, I can't help but wonder how this differs from book banning. If an author's work is effectively erased from public discussion, is that not a kind of informal ban? The key difference may lie in power. Book bans come from institutions wielding control over what people, often children, can access. Canceling happens through public discourse, but in an age where publishers drop controversial figures, just as W. Norton did with Blake Bailey after allegations surfaced against him, only for him to resell the book to another publisher. And now he has a new book coming out about his so-called cancellation that, based on the blurb, I will not be reading anytime soon. This cycle exposes the paradox of cancellation. While some authors disappear from public shelves, others pivot, reframe their narratives, and find new avenues for distribution. Meanwhile, bookstores stop stocking certain works, and corporations alter or remove content to align with modern values. The consequences can look strikingly similar to censorship. As the ALA warns, failing to select or removing resources purely because they or their authors are controversial is, in itself, a form of censorship. Is this a form of corporate gatekeeping, where narratives are carefully controlled, not by the government, but by market forces, responding to public pressure and the amplified influence of social media? The ALA advises library workers to evaluate materials based on content, not an author's actions. But as individuals, we don't have to abide by that same framework. We are free to make moral decisions about the books we engage with. But the question remains, do those decisions, when collective, functionally amount to banning? I've included Bailey's Cheever biography in my 2025 TBR. Do I believe he is an abhorrent individual based upon the allegations against him? Yes. Is he a good biographer? Also, yes. Am I interested in Cheever's life? Definitely. I've already spent money on the book, and it was remaindered at that, and not reading isn't going to do anything in terms of making Bailey feel my wrath. This is a bit like when people burned their Nike gear after Colin Kaepernick appeared in an advertising series for them. Nike doesn't care. You already paid for those socks. Why are you burning them? This hit particularly close to home for me over the holidays. I was reading Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword and found myself thinking, I really should read Mists of Avalon. And then I fell into a rabbit hole about Bradley. And I don't know that I can now. At least not at this moment. Maybe at some point, but I want to seek out some alternatives. I'm wrestling with this discomfort, trying to understand what it means to set a book aside, not because of its content, but because of its creator. The ALA makes the case that materials should not be removed from libraries simply because the creator is problematic. But it also acknowledges that readers have the right to assess content on their own terms. That's the balance I'm trying to strike here. No one is forcing me to remove the Mists of Avalon from my shelves, but I also can't unknow what I know. And this ultimately ties into my larger reckoning with Alice Munro. What does it mean to weigh a writer's legacy alongside their moral failures? How do I sit with the knowledge of who she was while still acknowledging the ways her work has shaped me? We ask, what do we do with Alice Munro and the other writers who fail us? But perhaps the real question is, how do we sit with that discomfort? This isn't just about drawing a line between good writers and problematic writers, because that dichotomy doesn't truly exist. The potential for both brilliance and failure exists in all of us. But we also have to safeguard against becoming jaded, wary of anyone and everyone because they have the capacity to fail us. Chances are, we've all failed ourselves multiple times if we're lucky, but hopefully we haven't given up on ourselves. If we still believe in our own capacity to grow, don't we want to extend that belief to others? But what about when some things feel unforgivable? What can't you come back from? I don't know that I can forgive Munro. I don't know that I am that good of a person. Maybe it's not about being a good person at all. Maybe it's about acknowledging that there are actions so egregious they change the way we see someone forever. And if that's the case, what does rehabilitation even look like? What are the limits of redemption? How much of that discomfort is the dissonance between how we want the world to be and how the world actually is? And what role do readers play in shaping that landscape? At the same time, the question of rehabilitation is complicated. What does accountability look like for writers who have harmed others? Is there a path back? And if so, who gets to determine it? There is no single answer, just as there is no single way to navigate this as a reader. The conversation continues, but I do know that ignoring it isn't an option. Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a discussion I think worth having. As always, I appreciate you. I hope life is good. I'll see you in the next one, which I promise will be more joyful.